Welcome to the New Level Podcast, everyone. On today's episode, we speak to Corey Mendelsohn, president at NewIntelligence, headquartered here in Montreal. Corey comes with over 25 years of experience in the IT space, coming from an IBM Cognos Business Analytics background. And really today we talk about the importance of business intelligence and analytics, especially in today's time. We talk about empowering users with the right tools to produce the right results for your business, and what to look for when you're choosing the right BI solution. So lots to learn on today's episode, guys. Without further delay, I bring you Corey Mendelsohn.
You are listening to the New Level Podcast, where humans talk about automation. We bring you industry experts and share new ideas that help elevate your business. Join your hosts, Philip Agib and Teresa Foreman, on the journey of automation technology.
Welcome, everyone, to the New Level Podcast. Joining me once again is my co-host, Teresa Foreman. My name is Phil Agib. And today we have an amazing guest that's been a long time that we wanted to invite on the show. His name is Corey Mendelsohn. He's the president at NewIntelligence, comes with a ton of experience in the IT industry and really specializing in the BI and business analytics space. Corey, super excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, Corey, let's just jump right into it. You come with a lot of experience in the analytics space, and we wanted to bring you onto the podcast because of all the knowledge that you can share with our audience when it comes to just giving them a little bit more visibility on their business. So, first question that we have for you is, obviously with COVID, it really changed the way that businesses operate. And a lot of people talk about how it's an agent of acceleration in terms of the areas of IT, of course. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about where you are seeing business analytics addressing the current situation and what's going on the marketplace.
Sure. So, right now with the increasing risk that we're having right now with COVID, we feel that business analytics really is more important than ever, especially for business survival and what's going on. And the challenges that we kind of come up with really is that we feel that if you can't measure it, how are you really going to be able to manage it and at the end of the day really be able to optimize things? So what business analytics is really giving you that capability of doing is it's giving you that visibility from a real-time perspective and really enabling the business end user to do their job to a point where what we're trying to do is really empower business users, because at the end of the day, these business users really have to take on these decisions. They need to make these decisions in one way or another. And it's really better off having the information at their fingertips rather than relying on gut instinct. Not to say that gut instinct is not going to be correct way to go, but it's always better to have the information to be able to make those intelligent decisions. Now, in regards to that, we had one customer that we were talking to, and when we implemented their solution, one of the CEOs kind of said to me, he said, well, now that we have, these kind of solutions, what used to take me 20 hours now takes me 20 minutes. Now, hearing that from a president or from a CEO, to me, that's very powerful words, because at the end of the day, it really allows them to get massive efficiencies inside of their organization and a huge cost savings that they can really take advantage of. So at the end of the day, for a company, there's more time for the business user to work on the business and to be able to work on what drives the business rather than all the intricacies around to getting the information that they want.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Corey. And question for you around financial management. So, crazy times right now, obviously, and financial management, cash flow, always a very critical KPI for any company. But there's an economic crisis, right, that's facing much of the world right now, and COVID's made it even more so, right? And it's how are companies who are attempting to recover from this black swan event. What role do you see business analytics playing in helping these companies and ultimately the more macro economy recover?
Sure. So, dealing with, executives, or what we like to refer to as numbers people, it really brings a lot of pressure, or significant pressure and sense of urgency to the situation, especially what's going on right now. And where it's getting particularly hard hit is the areas of inside of SMBs or small, medium-sized businesses. They're really getting hit hard. And what happens is these companies now have to make do with less in terms of resources, in terms of financial spend and so forth. So they really need to take advantage of much as possible on their own and be able to deliver still the information that they want throughout the organization. Now, we do that through automating manual processes in order to really be able to analyze the information, because a lot of these things are, it's a lot of time to do, it's time consuming, and the frequency in which a lot of these things are happening, we can eliminate that entire process. So what we end up doing is, it really reduces the amount of time to be able to get the data ready for them to be able to analyze the information. And what we're typically doing inside of organizations is we're really taking the business rules or the logic that they use on a regular basis, and we're trying to somehow automate those business rules so that at the end of the day, they don't need to continue to do the same thing over and over again, because then you end up having a situation where you really might have errors that are going to come up or typos that are going to come into play, and it's going to cause a lot of problems. So what we try to do is we try to reduce their dependence on certain things like Excel spreadsheets that are going to allow them to give them the information. Now, from a visibility perspective, really it gives some insight right into the health of the company, which is, to me, is always a critical area. And now, especially with everything going on due to these unprecedented times.
Right on, right on. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I think that the key is really in the management, right? And so it actually brings us to our next question, which is about, managing that skill set. So like, obviously business analytics requires the different technologies and processes to work synchronistically, but like, are you seeing that organizations and leaders, directors have the skill set to manage this complexity and create solutions themselves, or is there an increasing need to bring in new suppliers to ensure the interoperability driving efficiency across the organization?
Yeah, so, one of the things that we see today, and one of the most important areas that we're finding is inside of organizations, is a concept what we call self-service. And to me, that is the utmost important thing that you can be looking at. It is critical in terms of getting that self-service inside of an organization so people can really do things on their own without having to rely on someone else, either inside of the organization or outside of the organization. And we feel that simplicity and making it easy to use is, again, very, very important as well. So not only self-service, but that simplicity, so that it's not complicated, especially for the business user, that they can do things on their own. And what we really want to do is we want to teach them how to work smart, not only work hard, but work smart. And we also feel that a key area in making sure that these business users can work smart is really training. And we feel that that is one of the most essential areas that we can provide to customers in making sure that they are self-sufficient and work on their own. Because at the end of the day, the end goal is really to enable the end user as much as possible without, again, relying on other people. Now, you made a question with regards to third-party involvement. And what we always, talk to them about is, wanting to bring in those subject matter experts, because these subject matter experts are going to be able to ask the right questions. Why things are happening. What are you trying to achieve? Because what ends up happening with a lot of customers is they get the information or the data that they want. They might get it into an Excel spreadsheet, but then there's a lot of additional manipulation that needs to happen and a lot of different calculations. So what we try to do is we try to understand the process of where they're trying to get to. What is that end goal in order to be able to make the decision that they want, so that we can kind of put that business logic, put those business rules inside of the solution so that they have the information right away without having to do further manipulation. Now, in order to do that, one of the key areas is understanding the process. And so we sit down with them with fresh eyes and looking at how they're doing things, because, you know, a lot of organizations will look at things from the perspective of, well, I've always done it this way, you know, and looking at things with a fresh set of eyes and being able to understand what they're doing, we can come up with things that might be more advantageous, might be a little easier to address. And what we do is we try to understand, so that at the end of the day, we're providing guidance. We're giving them recommendations. We're not telling them exactly how things need to get done, but, you know, in terms of where things can be optimized. And for a lot of organizations, what we do is we become some sort of a sounding board, or we end up being part of a steering committee. And that's very important, because what we do is when we implement the solution, what we try to do is not only give the customer or the business users the ability to be self-sufficient, but also, if they have an IT support staff in play, to make them become self-sufficient as well, so that they can do things on their own. They can, you know, broaden the horizon of the solution, not just what was brought in or what was done from the very beginning. And what happens is, once we learn that technology, or once we teach that technology, what ends up happening is they end up starting to cover different areas inside of the organization, and things end up expanding. And then what they do is they end up coming back to us more from, you know, asking us questions and saying, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Does this make sense? And, you know, we might say, well, I would consider maybe doing this, this, and this, but this part that you're doing, you know, makes complete sense. So at least it gives them a kind of a direction, and, you know, not necessarily going down a rabbit hole in regards to being able to get at the information that they want. Now, obviously getting it right the first time is important, you know, and that's where outside involvement is going to happen. You know, that's where it's going to be, you know, they're going to be able to leverage. Not to say that customers can't do this kind of thing on their own, but there is going to be that learning curve where they're going to have to eventually get to a point to where they want. But, you know, we've had situations where customers have tried to do it on their own with training, and has spent, you know, maybe a year trying to do things, and then after they said, they come back and they said, you know, maybe we can use, you know, your experience to help us implement it, and things end up going that much faster. So that's really, you know, important. And what we try to do is we want to get the customer to, you know, let us come in, whose responsibility at the end of the day is bringing these sort of insights to a lot of different customers, and to basically take our experience from different projects that we've worked on in different industries, and maybe apply it to their sort of business so that they can get a fresh look and feel. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is really empower the business and the business user as much as possible without having to reinvent the wheel.
I love that. I love how you leave it in the hands of the business to guide you. And then you like you said, you're being part of the steering committee instead of telling them what to do, because ultimately they know their business better than anyone else. And so really it's a team effort. It's a collaborative effort between, you know, a potential third party and the business users and the leaders of the company. So I absolutely love that approach.
Yeah, I really love the aspect that you talked about, Corey, that consultative piece. That so you're not just you know, buying a software platform or selling a software platform and being, you know, and leaving them to their own devices. I think it could be really intimidating, right? In that case. And so that whole organizational philosophy that you're able to help infuse and help empower them, as you said, not just the business, but even right down to the end user level, is really important to drive their success. So on that note, how does helping those companies and driving that organizational philosophy that you just spoke to and empowering that end user through all the business analytic tools that you've been referencing, how do you help them do that, and what benefits do you think they should expect in terms of how they can bring their business to the next level?
Absolutely. So, one of the key things that, we tell customers is visibility, visibility, visibility. And, we want to provide that visibility on concrete information so that they can take the information that they are storing inside of their accounting system, their ERP system, whatever sort of information that they're gathering, and be able to expose that in a format that is digestible, something that they can make sense of, and so forth. And what we want to do is we want to look at, first and foremost, is we want to look at the historical aspect. We want to look at, where you were, because first of all, you need to see where you were in order to see where you're going. And we want to also be able to identify, what's working, what's not working, to really be able to identify some level of metrics or some level of trending and give them some sort of insight on how to be able to adjust for those things. So that's really what we're trying to achieve. Because again, it's very important to be able to understand what's going on inside of the organization, to really be able to see how you can improve upon things and so forth. And then we start getting into things with regards to the future aspect, where we start talking about where you're going. And that's when we start bringing in things such as, budgeting and forecasting and so forth, so that you're able to do, actual versus forecast and so forth. And being able to take, for example, last year's numbers as a starting point for you to be able to set a budget for the following year. And a lot of organizations we find, especially the smaller and medium-sized organizations, they do this, but the challenge that they run into is that the time that it takes to be able to create these budgets or to create these forecasts takes a significant amount of time. Additionally, that the level of granularity that they're going to is at a much higher level, because anytime you go down to a lower level of detail, it requires an extreme amount of analysis and understanding and time at the end of the day. So some of the tools that we end up working with end up, reducing that requirement completely and being able to give the information in a very quick fashion so that they can get to the information that they want at the end of the day. But what we're really providing to customers, I like to kind of give that concept of a Rubik's Cube, for argument's sake, where you have the information, and what we're doing is we're looking at what I like to call the W5 approach, which is the who, what, where, when, and why, in terms of any particular given area of the business that you're looking to analyze. And then what we do is we try to give that information, if we're talking about things like sales as an example, we'll look at things like who are you selling, what are you selling, when are you selling, and so on and so forth, and get all of those perspectives to be able to analyze to see where you could potentially optimize or potentially take advantage, because you might see some additional areas that you can kind of pounce on because there's opportunities that you can take advantage of. Maybe there's a certain type of customer that's buying something versus another customer that's not. And maybe there are upsell opportunities that you can kind of work in by having this Rubik's Cube where you can kind of twist and turn and look at things in various ways. And when you have that information, it really becomes a level of a time saver, because it's really user friendly and it's easy to digest the information and it's easy to manipulate. So that's one of the key things that we really want to get to. But the key is really getting the information in the hands of the business users so that they can make those business decisions on their own. And again, not to beat a dead horse, but to really get back to actually making those decisions based on data as opposed to gut instinct. Now, we also look at a lot of times, that current reporting process, and a lot of different organizations, the amount of time that's spent in preparing the data, in getting things organized, the amount of time that they're going to save is going to be, monumental. We've had customers that have spent, 3, 4, 5 days, just preparing the data so that they can do this kind of analysis inside of the organization. And what ends up happening is that because it takes so long to prepare the information and to get the data into a format, they only start looking at that information once a month. So they're looking at things in retrospect as to what has already happened, as opposed to being able to analyze things, what's happening in the current month, and be able to potentially make adjustments. Because again, they don't have that visibility, and the amount of time that things taking and all the manual efforts that are coming into play becomes, again, a big challenge. And so when we go into an organization, we always tell people, don't try to bite off more than you can chew. We want to grow or go with what we call the crawl, walk, run approach. That is something that's working with a manageable chunk that's going to be able to give you value and try to give you that quick win, ideally within a 90-day window. So this way you can see what's going on. You can get that quick ROI inside of the solution that you're putting in play. And then you can start seeing the benefits. Because what happens a lot of times is that we'll sit down with customers, and what we'll end up delivering in terms of what we designed might change, because we always get that aha moment from a customer that says, oh, I didn't realize that I can do this. Does that mean that I can do this, this, and this? And as a result, we end up starting to shift gears. So we end up getting into what we like to refer to as an iterative development, because they're really not going to know what they're going to get, because they partially know, but they don't realize the impact or the insights that are going to come, and it's going to start driving a lot of other areas that they want to start looking at.
So today's episode is sponsored once again by Vantry Systems. Vantry specializes in delivering EDI automation solutions, always with a human connection. If you're looking to integrate any kind of EDI documents with your trading partners, or someone that could benefit from the service, please feel free to reach out to us. We are always ready to help. Thank you. Back to the show.
Great. Corey, I really like what you said about, the amount of data that's available, and whether they're looking at it in a timely way, or whether they're looking at it across those 5 W's. And that's a really great point, because sometimes there's just like this, there's so much data, they don't know where to even begin, or what are the KPIs they should be tracking, what are the pieces of data that are going to impact their business. And, there's a lot of research, a lot of news, and sort of the industry hubs around how companies are really clamoring to use the data, like this huge influx of data they have, not only to drive innovation, which is important from a differentiation from a product or service perspective, but also very importantly, improving the customer experience, which in a lot of cases is becoming the big differentiator in terms of brand competitiveness. Is, are you delivering a better customer experience? And so much of that sits on data. Love to hear from you what you're seeing around those business analytics and how they can help organizations evolve that customer experience throughout that buyer journey.
Yeah, so we always tell customers, as I mentioned before, historical data is going to be a good predictor for the future. And what we end up looking at is things like, again, what items customers are buying this year versus last year. We had one, perfect example, when we're dealing with a customer that is addressing things like, CRM data. And so people are entering in, information, in regards to calls that salespeople are making, in regards to appointments, in regards to tasks and follow-ups. And, the CRM system is really capturing a lot of that information. It's just telling you, who's calling and stuff like that. But the challenge really becomes is that inside of organizations is, yes, okay, customers are being called, salespeople are making those calls, they're making those interactions and so forth. But there's a little bit kind of a disconnect between, all of those callings that are being done and all of those follow-ups and all of those emails and so forth and all of those tasks that are getting generated. But what is that turning into? What is that generating for them in sort of the organization? So what we're able to do is we're able to take the information and be able to look at it together. So you're able to see the information that relating to sales reps, discussions, meetings, and calls and so forth with customers, and see what sort of sales activity, for example, is getting generated. What kind of orders are getting generated? What kind of revenue at the end of the day is getting generated inside the organization, so that a VP salesperson can look at their sales team and saying, okay, within a given month, or as an example, these are the customers that this salesperson has called. Has that turned into any orders? Has that turned into any invoices and so forth, to be able to kind of, relate that information, to be able to really see, what each rep is selling the most of, what customers are buying. And again, looking for those opportunities inside of customers and saying, okay, this customer is buying these things because this rep is kind of pushing that. Well, I have other customers that are similar to that customer. Well, why aren't they buying those same kind of products? And again, it allows you to correlate the information in a very, very convenient way. And, again, sales is just one area. There's a lot of other departments that we can kind of leverage, whether it's purchasing, understanding lead time and inventory availability, being able to look at things as to when things are coming in, because again, when you're selling, you want to make sure that you have the inventory to be able to sell. So again, it's a matter of looking at that information in a cohesive fashion. Because at the end of the day, everyone is really looking to deliver that, exceptional customer experience. And what companies are trying to do right now is that race. How are we going to be able to leverage data to get us there? And for us, business intelligence and business analytics and a combination of automation are keys to get you there.
Love that, Corey. And what's really interesting, especially me as a sales director, is what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, what can we improve on, what is a one rep doing better than the other, how can we take something that they're doing and help train the rest of the team with that. And I just think that it not only does it greatly impact the results of a company, but it also makes for a better experience for the customer, because if you can identify a need with one customer and find the same thing in another, and it's something that you're good at as a company, then it's a win-win for all. And like your answer in the previous answer, you were saying that it's really part of the historical data. I think it's an approach that everyone should be taking, and I'm sure you can help a lot of companies with that approach. Now, obviously, there's lots of competitive solutions out there, but we work a lot with CTOs and CEOs, like all the C-level leaders in a company. What should they be looking at when researching for the right solutions? I'm sure there's a couple of things that you could share with our audience to help them out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, clearly price is always a factor. That's one thing that always comes into play. It's a huge proponent in regards to a decision that a company is going to make, especially in the smaller type organizations where, they don't have, the funds to be able to spend an infinitesimal amount of dollars to be able to get things going. But at the end of the day, there are so many different things that are out there at a price conscious perspective, but that shouldn't be the only factor that you should be looking at. There are other important factors to consider, and I get this question asked to me all the time, why this solution over that? And, for me, at the end of the day, one of the number one answer is it's not price. Yes, price comes into play, but for me, it's the ease of use for the business user. If the tool is not simple enough or friendly enough for the business user to be able to either work with it or want to work with it, then price is not going to make a difference no matter how you slice it, because if they're not going to use it, then you're just wasting your money at the end of the day. The other thing is that we're looking at is the reliance on IT. IT, and again, some smaller organizations are farming things out to their IT services. Larger organizations or medium-sized organizations might have certain people that are playing a dual role or what have you, but you really want to minimize the reliance on IT as much as possible. Not to say that they're not going to get involved at all. We still want them to manage potentially the infrastructure or whatever's there, but not to have to deal with the day-to-day, not to have to deal with the, oh, I need a report that does this, can you give me this? Yeah, then it's going to go into the queue, and depending on who screams the loudest is going to be the one that's going to get that request responded to. So again, we want to make sure that we reduce that reliance. Another thing that's important is flexibility, to the point where you want to have a solution that is going to allow to evolve with you throughout the organization and into potentially different areas for additional capability. And the example that I'll give is, sometimes customers will want to have, a solid foundation with regards to reporting, or they'll want to have a solid foundation with regards to dashboarding. But then you need to start thinking a little forward thinking, so that if you're going to want to eventually do things like budgeting and forecasting and so forth. Again, you want to make sure that you're going along that crawl, walk, run approach. You don't want to take on more than you can chew at one time. But at the end of the day, you want to have a solution that's going to be able to evolve with you so that you don't have to start integrating different products or different technologies to give you the capability that you want. And the other thing is you want to make sure that you're working with a competent team, not only internally, but also externally. And you want to make sure that the synergies, they gel between the two types of organizations. So the consultative services that you're going to require, you want to really make sure that you leverage the skills that you already have in-house. You don't want to bring in necessarily a third-party firm that's going to say, okay, yeah, I want to do everything for you. But if you already have certain skills inside of the organization and they can be made available, we want to pull those people into the solution mix, because then, the more people that you get involved, the higher rate that you're going to have for success. So again, we try to go in there and say, well, who do you have that kind of fits this role? And because at the end of the day, the customer is going to have to live with this solution. So we want to make sure that they have that right fit, those right people inside of the organization. There are different kind of customers. Some want everything done for them. Some want it half and half. And some of them, just want to be taught. But again, depending on what it is, you need to get that right mix inside of an organization. Because at the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to empower the business user and the customer so that they become self-sufficient and they can do their job, as effectively and efficiently as possible.
Totally makes sense. Thank you.
Well, yeah, that was really powerful there, and I hope the audience are able to take those key takeaways. Minimize the reliance on IT. Provide more flexibility, give the user the power to make their own decisions, and really work with a competent team internally, externally, and make them gel together to make sure to provide the good results. Honestly, Corey, thank you so much for your time. This has been absolutely amazing. I really hope our audience can benefit from this. I do want to give you the opportunity to give a chance for our audience to learn more about you, the business analytics space, and NewIntelligence. Tell them a little bit about yourself and what you can offer.
Yeah, so again, for us, if you are looking for, assistance on how to get started or how to best good BI solution or analytics strategy, don't hesitate. Feel free to reach out to me directly. I'd love to help guide you and just kind of give you some key advice in terms of what to be looking out for, where those pitfalls might be. And if we can work together, be more than happy to collaborate with you.
Great stuff, Corey. Thank you again for your time and for taking the time out of your busy day to speak to us, Teresa and I, on the New Level podcast. We hope to have you back again soon. Keep up the great work, and looking forward to seeing what you guys do next.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys' time.
Great chatting with you. Thanks.
Thank you.
You are listening to the New Level podcast, where humans talk about automation. We bring you industry experts and share new ideas that help elevate your business. Join your hosts, Philip Agib and Teresa Foreman, on the journey of automation technology.